Welcome to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by Haven, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Haven Hubcast. I am Nancy Sheed, your host, and I am excited to welcome back Eileen Springer, who we've had on the Hubcast before. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, Nancy.
For those of you who heard before, I'm going to refresh your knowledge that Eileen is the founder of Central Park Executive Coaching. Eileen's clients include C-suite executives, mid-career and early career professionals, as well as teams. She brings over 30 experience to HR and talent management teams in large global companies. And her real focus is being an executive coach. So we've got a lot to unpack here, Eileen. So welcome back.
Thank you.
When you were last here, and we'll put the show notes in because I think it's those conversations we had before. We were coming out of pandemic. We were talking about the Great Resignation. I'm not sure quite hit our lexicon at that point. And so it was kind of a, what's next? What are people doing? Now, here we are 18 months or so later, and the words are still burnout, exhaustion, employee dissatisfaction, resiliency, and companies still trying to figure out what the new work looks like. Can you kind of give a comment of what you're seeing now kind of versus 2 years ago post-pandemic? And are things better? Are they worse? Or are they different?
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. That's a great summary of what the path has looked like over the past 18 months since we last spoke. And I do think things are looking a bit different. I would not necessarily designate them as better or worse. I really think it depends on what type of environment one is working in and where they are in their career. And I think the best label that I can give to what we're experiencing right now is a recalibration of what the experience of an employee is, as well as a company. And what we're seeing as trends in general now as coaches is that for those working in large companies, and even in smaller companies to some regard, there is more of a move to bring people back together with more of an in-person experience. Maybe not full-time, but for deliberate gatherings, which could be quarterly if companies are all remote. And for companies that do have a home base, many are asking people to come back to the office, at least in a hybrid situation. So, for example, in the New York area, it's pretty common now to see mandatory 3 to 4 days back in the office. That's required. And for many people, they're seeing this as a positive. I know we're hearing a lot about how that may not be necessary for certain functions, how it can add to a lot of expense for people to have to come back into the office. But for people that are still building careers, particularly for those that are earlier in career, for the most part, it's being seen as a positive and creating more learning experiences, more satisfaction around connection and building of community again, which has been sorely missed by many.
I love to hear that because as you and I were speaking, especially people who are early stage, just the conversations that happen at said water cooler or after work or going out to lunch, right? Like that just aren't happening if you're sitting behind a desktop or laptop at home. How are, more mid-level and even in a hybrid environment, I should go back, how are managers of teams again, building that community or building those connections when it's not exactly, it's different. It's just not the same as seeing everybody 8 to 5, 9 to 5 in the office. How is building company culture, connection, and community looking different in a positive way, in the same way I understand it's probably also adding a lot of stress to people who have to figure this out.
Yes, I would say probably the highest level of stress that I see in a population are mid-level managers. They're struggling with what this means for them personally and their career development. And there's a lot of challenges as managers because they're not clear on what's expected of them often. They're not clear on what the developmental needs are for their employees. The approach to communicating with their employees is not one approach, one dialogue fits all. And being able to develop as a manager and discern what's the right level, the right cadence, and the right language to be an effective manager in this environment. There are many managers that are managing employees they have never met in person before, or people that started during the pandemic and never really had a chance to bond with their peer group. So the unevenness of that and the burden on a manager to level out those relationships and keep their employees connected to the larger mission of an organization can be a real challenge.
I actually met somebody at Haven and, they were part of post-pandemic buyout merger. She's managing a global team, never met any of them in person. I mean, it's like 20 people she's managing and never met in person. And, there's just a physical disconnection with that, much less, kind of the corporate culture, community building. Let's talk a little more about the sort of the managers, because as you and I talked about before, they are having to sort of deal with both sides of the coin, right? Like, as you started, they're worried about their own career, but at the same time, they're worried about developing, other people's careers and being a good manager. How are they able, or what advice are you giving, or what questions are you asking to keep them from going down this the path to either complete and utter burnout or throwing their hands up and saying, I've got to quit or change jobs? Like, are there some steps or some questions to ask, to help them filter out exactly where they are and what's going on?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I think for a manager or for anyone in a role with a lot of responsibility, self-care is critical to ensure that you can be the best you can be first. So I think it's putting on your own oxygen mask first is always very important. In addition to that, having managerial courage and not shying away from what you think may be difficult conversations. And that includes not being afraid to have career discussions with your employees, asking your employees what they want, being aware of what their goals are. Don't be afraid of hearing that it may be goals that aren't aligned with their current job or even their current organization. And I'd say more times than not, when managers do have the courage to have those conversations, as well as the discipline to have those conversations on a regular basis, there's very often solutions that can be mutually beneficial to the employee as well as to your team and your company. And those typically wind up being the managers that retain the best employees and find opportunities for upskilling their employees in ways, again, that benefit the employee as well as the company. One of the biggest challenges that managers have right now is finding qualified talent for the job and creating those opportunities to upskill the talented people that they have and being able to translate that to success and growth of an organization. Those are the organizations that are thriving, not those that always lean more toward, we just need different talent. We just need better talent.
That makes total sense. And how does one sort of know that upskilling is kind of a better choice or the right choice or the first thing they should try versus no amount of upskilling is going to sort of get them where they want to be, right? Whether it's either a bad boss or a bad corporate culture, or the other way around. If you're trying to manage somebody at whatever point, they're not willing to upskill or it's not working. What is, I love the positive, but it may get to a point where upskilling is not the answer. What does that look like?
Exactly. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, this is where it becomes very challenging to manage a full remote team. It
Mm,
makes it that much more difficult to truly know your employees. So the first step is truly knowing your employees
mm,
and doing the analysis to truly understand what skills are required to be successful in a job. I have sat through many a talent review and succession planning process in my years in human resources. And I will say it is shocking how much employees and organizations don't know, that don't know about their people, and that haven't done the work to do the analysis to understand what skills are required for success in a job.
mm,
And not to get off on a tangent, but that's why managers typically struggle with writing job descriptions. They often don't know what's required to successfully perform a job.
mm,
Doing that work, taking the time to really understand who your employees are and getting a true assessment of their skills in addition to their desires, and being able to match that with what's required to successfully perform a role.
mm. And does that work the same way, Eileen, in terms of if you are the employee that needs to figure out if you're capable of upskilling? Let's say you're at a higher level, right? What does that process looks like if maybe you don't have a manager or leadership team or executive level who are in the position to help you do that? What are the questions you maybe can ask yourself to realize, like, what could I do if nobody's sort of helping me up this next ladder? What can I do? Or maybe it is time to move on.
Yes, and that becomes the topic of many coaching assignments that I
Mm,
have. It requires some self-reflection. And this is where working with a coach can be extremely helpful. Having that safe space where you're going to get honesty and you're going to be asked questions to elicit self-reflective responses can be very important, particularly at pivotal times. And being able to reflect and understand what's not going well and why. And it often requires having the ability and the courage to manage up, to not
mm,
wait for your efforts to be recognized, but understanding that there is a level of assertiveness. There are actions that one can take to initiate these conversations with sponsors, with peers, with managers, with mentors, and to put the effort in nurturing those relationships so you can have those honest conversations and understand what's not going well. Are you getting honest feedback? Are you struggling with clients? What is it that is not working? Is it because of skills or is it because of interpersonal relationships? Is it that you've got to be better at influencing, particularly in matrix organizations? That becomes very important. Is it executive presence? There's so many soft skills as well
mm,
as hard skills. I mean, there are lots of people that are in technical roles, and it's easier to figure out if you're in a technical, functional type of role where it's more about your hard skills that leads to success. It's a little easier there to identify, where do I need to go to a class? Where do I
mm.
need to sit down with someone else to improve my hard skills? But those soft skills become even more important as one moves up in an organization.
Mm. This has been such a good kind of reflection as we're headed into the sort of back end of the year and getting back to kind of work and everything else. So I'm taking away from our conversation the focus on recalibration, thinking about upskilling, whether you're upskilling or you're helping your team upskilling, I love that the result of all this is kind of, as you've said, community and really communication. Like I'm sitting here writing my notes and I'm just like, managerial courage. Wow, that sounds very empowering, but also very daunting, right? So, and having some of these courageous conversations. So I'm inspired. I hope our listeners will be as well, as they're sort of thinking about what their next move is or how to make the most of the rest of what's left of this year and looking into the next year. Eileen, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more, what's the best way to reach you?
Yes, so they can reach me at my website, which is centralparkexecutivecoaching.com. And they can also find me at Haven 2 days a week. I office out of there and really enjoy being there. So for those that are looking for that in-person connection, come and seek me out there.
And that's a wonderful tie into Haven and back to building community and how we are doing some of the things that companies aren't doing these days. So I love that that's a regular part of your work as well. Eileen, thank you so much for your time and expertise. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you as things continue to evolve and change in the working world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
And that's another episode of a Haven Hubcast. If you like what you hear, please give us a review, share this with others who you think might be interested. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Haven is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Haven is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the Haven community online at haven.com. That's HAYVN.com. Haven Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.